Using pauses during your public speech or presentation is an important way to engage the audience and to deliver your message effectively. A lot of us fail to use pauses in the right manner, and therefore we throw our audience off and we lose their engagement throughout our presentation. Hi, I'm Ryan McLean and I'm from PublicSpeakingPower.com, where we teach people like you how to become more powerful and effective public speakers. And today we're talking about pauses, which is something that we hate to do and something that we find very difficult during a presentation. The reason that we say and filler words like or basically is that we hate to pause during a presentation. So why do we do this, and how can we effectively use pauses? Firstly, I just want to discuss why we hate pauses so much. And the reason that we do it is because when we're speaking in everyday life, if we pause, that is a cue for the other person to begin talking. So what we do naturally when we're talking to other people is that we fill the pauses with words like or 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 like, all of these filler words, so we indicate to the other person that we are still speaking and it's not their turn to speak yet. But when you're getting up and you're speaking in front of a crowd, well, they're not going to talk back. So by saying these filler words, you're actually going to distract the crowd from the message that you're trying to deliver. So here are my 12 tips on how you can effectively use pauses during your public speech or presentation. Tip number 1 is to recognize when you're using these filler words or phrases. So recognizing when you're saying when you're saying when you're saying other filler words is the most important part to using pauses effectively. Because if we're filling our pauses with these words and we're finding pauses awkward, then we're never going to go ahead and use them at all, and therefore we can't start to use them effectively. So by understanding when we use these filler words and by removing those filler words from our vocabulary, we then open up the opportunity to pause and to pause for effect and to create a better presentation using pauses. So that's tip number 1, is to understand when you're using these filler words and to stop using it.
Hi. This is my doll, Jessie.
Good girl, that was very good. Do you want Daddy to keep doing his video and you can be in it? Yeah? Tip number 2 is to plan our pauses. So when you go through and you create your speech outline or you write your speech down word for word, you want to start to plan your pauses in your speech. If you need to, just write it in brackets and write pause and then close the brackets. And this indicates to you that at this point in time, you want to pause during your speech. So by planning in advance when you want to add pauses, you're more likely to use them in the right spots and you're more likely to use them effectively. Tip number 3 is to pause to maintain your pace. If you feel like you're going too fast and you're talking really fast, then plan some pauses in or add some pauses in to maintain your pace during your presentation. By pausing for a second or even half a second after a sentence, or if you feel you're going too fast, you can start to calm yourself down and you can start to bring yourself back to a regular pace that people can understand and people can happily follow. So just by adding one pause, you're then going to get more comfortable adding a second pause, and you're going to be able to maintain a constant speed of your presentation, and you won't end up going too fast, which is what a lot of nervous speakers do. Tip number 4 is to pause if you lose your spot. So what a lot of people do when they lose their spot is they start freaking out and they start shuffling their papers, or they say, "Oh my gosh, I lost my spot." But don't reveal to the audience that you have lost your spot, but instead calmly pause, give yourself a second to think, and then continue your presentation where you left it off, or if you need to, pick it up from somewhere else. But by remaining calm and by pausing when you lose your spot, you're not losing the audience and you're not revealing to them that you've lost your place, which makes them feel like you're not respecting their time. But you're just taking a moment. This gives them time to think. Remember, they're not consistently focused on you. they're all living in their own heads and they're all thinking about their own things. So for you to pause for a little bit when you lose your place can actually gain more attention than you would losing attention. And the fact is, people probably aren't paying that much attention that they would notice anyway. Tip number 5 is to pause in replace of commas. So if you're giving a sentence and it contains a comma, then a comma is a good time for you to pause. So that's just a little tip for you. If you were to write out the sentence and it would have a comma, well, why not pause at that comma? Another thing to do, which is tip number 6, is to pause at the end of sentences. The end of sentences form a natural point in your presentation where you can pause for a moment and then continue on. A pause symbolizes that you have finished your sentence and that you are now moving on to another sentence. Tip number 7 is to pause at the end of a paragraph. So just like the paragraphs have that white space in between it when we're reading, we can use longer pauses or just a short pause to symbolize that we've finished a paragraph and we're now moving on, maybe not to a completely different topic, but we're going to be talking about something else within that same topic. So by having a pause at the end of a paragraph, you can symbolize to people that you're moving on, get them in the right mind frame, and make sure that you maintain their attention. Tip number 8 is to pause for emphasis. That's right, I said pause for emphasis. So this can be done in 2 ways. You can pause between your words, so it could be like this: pause for emphasis. So as you see, I've got pauses in between those words, or you could just pause for an extended period of time at the end of your important point. So they're the 2 different ways that you can pause for emphasis, and pausing for emphasis is a great way to grab your audience's attention and make sure that they remember and that they were paying attention to the point that you just delivered. If you need to, repeat the point and repeat the pause of emphasis again as well. Tip number 9 is to pause for rhetorical questions. So when you're asking the audience a rhetorical question like, who in this audience wants to be a millionaire? Pause at the end of your rhetorical question to give them time to think and to give them time to answer the question in their own mind. So pausing at the end of rhetorical questions is an important pause to use. Tip number 10 is that you could start with a pause. So rather than getting up there and just going straight into your speech, you could start by actually pausing for a moment. You may want to use the power stance, which is your legs maybe just a little bit wider than your shoulders and your arms down, or maybe you're just in a comfortable position and you just pause and you wait. And this symbolizes to the audience that you're ready to start your presentation. And because you're pausing, which is not something that people usually do, you're likely to grab attention. It's not something that I would do when I'm giving a video, because people only last about 7 seconds at the start of a video. So if you're pausing for that time, they're probably going to click away and go somewhere else. But during a presentation where you've got the audience's attention, or you've at least got their presence for a set amount of time, a pause at the beginning can be a great tool to use. Tip number 11 is to pause after a joke. So this is a way of giving people time to laugh, or giving the punchline time to set in and for them to understand it. But pausing at the end of the joke is a great way to emphasize that you have finished a joke. Now is the time to laugh. And if no one laughs, well then end your pause and quickly move on. And tip number 12 is to pause when you're delivering a new slide. So if you've got a presentation, maybe it's PowerPoint, maybe it's a keynote presentation, and you're flicking through slides, at the point where you change from one slide to another slide, that may indicate a good time for you to pause during your presentation. So as you're moving through the slides, when a new slide comes up, consider pausing for emphasis and giving people time to read that slide and take that slide in. So there you have 12 tips about how to effectively use pauses during your public speech or presentation. If you want more videos, podcasts, or articles just like this one, then please head over to PublicSpeakingPower.com, and I want to help you become a more powerful and effective public speaker. If you've got any feedback you want to give me or any questions that you want to ask, please email me. I love speaking to watchers or listeners or readers. You can email me at ryan@PublicSpeakingPower.com. So until tomorrow, when the next episode comes out, keep practicing and keep becoming a powerful public speaker.